This week's reading skill is sequence of events. The author organizes events in order that they happen. This is called sequence of events or order of events. When you retell a story, make sure you put the events in the correct order so that the story makes sense. Okay, so you may see sheets kind of like this: first, next, then, after that, and finally. This is how you would retell a story. This is also connected to making a summary. You want to make sure that you put the things in the correct order. All right, we're going to look at a story today. This is a nonfiction text, as opposed to your story of the week, I Need My Monster, which is fiction. We're going to look at a story called From Sap to Syrup. So let me pull up our story. Okay. And this is a story about making maple syrup. All right. Now, the structure of this story is they've got it organized by dates. So February 11th, March 18th, March 21st, and March 24th is the different dates in this story. All right. So let's read through this story. And then let's see if we can sequence the events of the story, right? Let me zoom in a bit. My grandpa makes maple syrup. He sells the syrup at the farmer's market. There are many maple trees on his farm. So if he's making the syrup and he's selling the syrup and he has a farm, I'm thinking that this is probably what he does for a living. This is his livelihood. He uses the trees to make syrup every winter and spring. Grandpa asked me to help him make the syrup this year. All right. Now I think he's going to tell us how to do it. We began last week. First, okay, this is an indicator word that this is the first thing that they do. We drilled holes in the trees. Next, we put spouts in the holes. We hung buckets from the spouts, and the buckets will catch the sap that comes out of the spouts. Sap is a clear liquid that maple trees make. It is made of water and sugar. Now, we will wait for the trees to make sap. I have a spring break next month. I will come back to Grandpa's farm then. We will collect the sap, and I'm so excited to learn more about how to make maple syrup. March 18th. So this is about a month from February 11th to March 18th is a little bit over a month. Today, Grandpa showed me the sap that came out of the trees. He told me it takes 40 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup. So I want you to think about that. 40 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup. Think about a milk jug. So a milk jug is 1 gallon. So it's 40 gallons, 40 milk jugs of tree sap to make 1 milk jug of syrup. That's a lot. Next, Grandpa took the buckets to the sugar house. So here's another sequencing word, next. This is where the syrup is made. I helped carry the buckets, and they were heavy. We will do this for a few more days, and then I will see what happens in the sugar house. Now, I circled this because it is a sequencing word, but this isn't really part of the sequence. I'm going to mark that off. March 21st. Grandpa boiled the sap in the sugar house today. He explained that the boiling removes the water from the sap. He showed me the sap. In my mind, I'm thinking about visualizing the sap being boiled in a pot. It was starting to turn brown and become syrup. Then came my favorite part, taste testing. There are a few different types of syrup. Some syrup is light brown, some is dark brown. Each has its own flavor. I can't decide which flavor I like best. March 24th. Today, Grandpa and I put syrup in bottles. We will put caps and labels on the bottles, and then Mom and Dad came to take me home. We took a bottle of sweet maple syrup with us. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to list the steps that we found in this story to making maple syrup. Now, there's two different ways that you can do this. You could do it in like a flow chart where it went 1 through 6. So we could do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the way I'm choosing to do it today is I've got my paper and I've broken my paper into 6 squares. And I'm going to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, what I like to do is I like to start with the first step and the last step and then fill in the most important things in the middle. All right, so I know that the first thing, it tells me right here, is that we drilled holes in the trees and the spouts are put in the holes. So I'm going to put those two together. We drilled holes in the trees and put spouts in the hole. And this would be the spout that he sticks in the hole of the tree to get out the sap. All right. So step 1, they drilled holes and placed spouts in the holes. Period. All right, and I know that the last thing that they did to make the syrup was that they put the syrup in bottles. Now, the last thing that happened in the story is that he took syrup home with him, but that's not the last thing that happened in making the syrup. So step 6 would be the syrup is bottled. Now, let's think about what were the most important 1, 2, 3, 4 things that happen in between there. All right, so they drilled the hole and put the spout in. And then they hung a bucket from the spout to catch the sap. Okay, I think that would be important. So they hung buckets to catch the sap. So now I'm thinking, okay, how does it go from sap to syrup? All right, so I've only got 3 more spaces. So once the buckets are filled up, so it says that now we wait for the trees to make sap, and he goes home, and then he comes back, and next they take the buckets to the sugar house where the syrup is made. Okay, so the buckets go to the sugar house. All right, so they drill the hole in the tree, hang the bucket, put the bucket in the sugar house, and then they have got to boil. So they put it in the sugar house, and then Grandpa boils the sap in the sugar house to make it syrup. So the sap is boiled to make syrup. Remember, he said that they boil off the water so that they can make it into syrup. Now, before they put it in the bottle, after they boil it, do you remember what he and the little boy did? They taste tested it. That would probably be my favorite part too. Okay, so we read this story, how sap from the tree turns into syrup, and then we wrote down a list or a sequence of how that happens. They drill the hole and place spouts in the hole. They hung up buckets to catch the sap. The buckets go in the sugar house. The sap is boiled. They taste it and then they bottle it up.